In this tutorial, we are going to build a Google Apps script that will allow us to append list items, paragraphs, and table cell items in a Google Doc using a drop-down menu item. So how do we do all this? So imagine I've got a to-do list here, and I want to add a date timestamp every time I completed a task in my to-do list. So I can click on one of these to-do list items and hit check box DTS or date timestamp menu item, and then click the Add DTS submenu item. And you'll see that the date and the timestamp with my email address has been added. I can click on another one and do the same thing. And once I'm done, I could check the item. Alternatively, I might put this to say that I've read the function here and I understand it by clicking on my date timestamp. Another thing I could put in is a date and timestamp at the end of my diary entry. So I could click anywhere in this diary entry paragraph and click Add Date Timestamp. So how does it all work? Go into Tools and get into the Google Apps Script Editor, and I'll meet you there. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to build our menu drop-down item, which is this checkbox DTS, and it's a custom menu item. To do that, we're going to use a function called onOpen. Now this function is a custom trigger item that's exclusive to Google Apps Scripts. And what it basically does is that when this Google Doc is opened, it will look for things to execute inside that function. Now in our case, we want to execute the menu item to create a menu with our checkbox DTS as our main menu and our submenu as an add date timestamp. So let's go in here and we'll hit enter. And let's go document at to grab our Google Apps Script document app class and go get UI for get user interface. And we're going to change some bits of information to this. So I'll hit enter and tab just to make it neat and tidy. And first thing we're going to do is hit create menu. Create menu. And that is going to give us our main menu item across the top of our menu bar, and we are going to call this checkbox DTS, and we'll close that and done. Let's hit enter again. And so the next thing we want to chain onto this is the add item method here, and the add item has two arguments. The first one is the title of the add item menu, so that's going to be add DTS, and then the function that it calls. And let's call this appendElement as our function. E-L-E-M-E-N-T. Good-o. To actually build this menu item, we need to add it to the UI. So we'll hit enter again and we'll chain one final method on, and that's add to UI. And we'll just close that off there. So if I hit Control S and go back to our append DTS over here, you'll see that our menu item isn't there yet. It's only going to happen on open. So that means if we refresh this Google document, it should appear. Now note when it refreshes, you're going to lose your code because it closes and then opens again. But behold, we've got our checkbox DTS. And if you open it, we've got add DTS. If I click at it, nothing's going to happen because the function hasn't been found. So let's dismiss that and let's create that function. So go down to Tools, Script Editor. Okay, our next task is to build this appendElement function. So we'll type in function, appendElement. And the first thing we want to do is to grab some variables. And these first variables are going to be our document variable. And we'll just make a little note. We'll say doc variables. And we'll say const, because they're not going to change, doc equals document app, and we just want this document, so we can use the get active document method here and close it off. And then the next thing we want to do as part of our task is wherever the cursor is, we want to add a date timestamp to that portion of text. So if it's this checkbox line in the text, at the end of it, if we put our cursor anywhere here, we want to add a date timestamp. If we're in the paragraph, we click anywhere on this paragraph, we want the date timestamp to add it to the end. So we need to find where the cursor is. So to do that, we can use the get cursor method. So we can go const cursor equals, and we will say doc, so because we're calling it from the doc, and we'll say get cursor. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to get the element inside that cursor. In Google Docs or in the document app, each section is split into elements or child elements. So this header will be an element, this to-do sentence here will be an element, then you'll have a big overarching element for all these checkbox items, and then there'll be child elements for each individual check item as well, just like there is with the table. So the main table will be an element, then each item inside the table will be an element. Okay, so we need to find the element that this is on. So we can do this now with our cursor item. So we'll say const, and we'll call it element equals cursor, which we called just before, and we'll say get element, and close our braces. Nice. All right, so we've got our doc, cursor, and element variables. The next ones we want are our input variables. So what information we want to bring back into our Google Doc. So these are going to be our date timestamp and our email. So let's call this input variables and hit enter. So first one is going to be dates, also const date, and we'll just use the JavaScript new date constructor. Let's go new date. And then we also want to grab our email. So we can go const email. And to do this, we can use the session class in Google Apps Script. So it's a capital S for session, E-double-S, there it is. So session.getActiveUser, and that's going to be the person editing the sheet, and we'll say get email. And we'll close the brackets. Now, because we're calling the session class and asking for the get email, it will ask us for permission to run the script, but it's going to ask us for permission to run the script the first time anyway, because we're making edits to the document. So if you have other users that are a bit concerned, you need to let them know about this. All right, so cool. So we've got email. And now we want to combine all this together to create the text that we are going to apply to the end of each element that we assign. So we'll call this const input val equals, and let's use these backticks here. So usually it's on the top left hand side of your keyboard, and you can see the backticks are not single quotation marks, they're backticks, or grave something, I don't know, has another special name that's really weird. And we'll hit space, and then we'll put a dash in, and we'll say complete, so we know what's going on. And we'll put a colon. You don't have to do this, you can change the text to how you want. So the first thing I want to do is add the date itself, not the time. So I'm going to draw this from the new date. We're going to put in our variable. So to do that, we'll put our $sign and 2 curly braces, not 2.5. And then we'll type in date, and then we can use the to date, not Todd, that's not going to work, to date string JavaScript method here. And that will draw from this date up here and just grab the date string. And that should get the current date for us. Next, we want to add in the time. So we can hit the $sign again to go into a variable or an action, and we'll go date to local, and we want the time this time, local time string, and we'll close the brackets there. And that'll give us the time from our new date constructor, and it will make it into the local time that's registered with our script. The next thing we'd like to add is we'll put in a little pipe just to separate the date from the user's email. And I'll just grab the email of the person who has clicked the button. Okay, so this is all custom information. It's something that you can change yourself to however you want it. So this row here is something that you can modify to your own designs. So what we're going to do here, and as you saw in the example, was that we're going to style the text to make it look a little bit different. So we could add some bolds, italics, some coloring to it, and a background color to it as well. So to do this, we need to actually find where our date timestamp text starts and ends inside the element. So let's create 3 more functions here to do that. So the first one is const, and this is going to be input val length. I could spell length, and that's going to equal the input val. So this is what we created up here, and that's going to be the length of it. Next, we are going to grab the element length. Element length. And we want to grab the element above, so it's this element up here in row 18. And to get the length, we need to convert it to text first. So we'll say as text, which is a documents app method. Then we'll need to get the text, and then we'll ask for the length, which is here, this property here. Nice. Finally, so now we need to get just the area where we're adding a date timestamp. So we've got the element length and we've got the input value length. So we need just to get everything at the end of the element length plus the length of the input value, minus a few things I'll mention in a moment. So let's go const and vonst. That's archaic German, I believe. Const is new element length, we'll call it, and we'll grab our element length. So we need to add this element length here to the input val length, which is up here. And now remember, our count for strings always starts at 0, so it's going to give us one more than what we need. So we'd have to subtract 1. But one important thing is if we're styling something and we keep the styles right up to the end of the sheet and the user hits enter, that style is going to carry across to the next row, and that's probably going to make the user a bit sad. So instead of doing -1, we'll add -2, so it goes back to the original styling of the text in that element. So if they click the end of that element and hit enter, the styling that we made for the date timestamp isn't going to carry with it. Great. So now we want to put in a bunch of styles to style up our date timestamp. So what we can use is something called the attributes or set attributes method, which will allow you to set a bunch of attributes all at once. There are other approaches by individually using methods like set italics, set bold, set font family, set foreground color. But if you use each one at a time, that's an independent call back to the Google Doc, which slows things down. Using the set attribute method allows us to do it all at once, and it's just one single call to the Google Doc. So let's take some of the computation time away from our process and use set attributes. So for the set attributes, one of the arguments is to build an object of all the styles that we want to add. And we can do this with the document app attribute enumerator, which gives us a list of all the styles that we can use. So let's get cracking. So first things first, let's go const, and let's shorthand our numerator calls to just attr for attributes. And we'll go document app, and then attribute. And let's close that off. Okay, and now we're going to build out our object for our set attributes method. So let's go const, and we'll call this styles, or style, equals, and then we'll build an object, hit enter. And the first one we want to build is the attribute. This attribute is calling documents app attribute, and then we'll first ask for the font family. And that's going to be equal to my most commonly used one, which is Merriweather. Okay, so you can see a couple of errors here because we're trying to assign a variable or something like that to a key, which we can't do. But we can work around this by using some square braces, which will convert that into a key text. Then we'll have our key and value pairs working fine. Let's hit comma now, and let's open up our square braces. We'll go ATTR, and we'll make this one italics. And now you can see our list here. That's been incredibly helpful, which is italics here, or italic, the singular form. And this is going to be whether it's true or false. So obviously this is going to be true. It would be weird if you built this and said false, unless you're converting it from italics back to normal text. And let's now add another attribute. And we'll make this one bold. And colon, true. Comma, and another one, attribute. And let's do background color. And we will make our background color a nice light gray just to distinguish it. And we'll use our hexadecimal color codes here, and we'll go E, 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 E. Just like you're really excited about something. Okay, and then the last one we'll put in is our foreground color, which is basically going to be our text color. So ATTR, and we'll say 4. There it is there. And let's go a good green. We'll go hash, and then we'll say 34A853. Obviously memorize that. If you believe that, believe anything. And our style's all set up. Okay, so last thing we need to do to get all this running is to add our text and set our attributes. To do that, first we're going to call our element, which we got up here on line 18. And we're going to say as text. So now we're moving into the text side of this element information. And we'll just hit enter because we're going to change some methods. And the next one is append text, and that's already appeared there. And then what text are we going to append? Yep, our input values. So we'll use an input val. And now we need a style, so we're going to use set attribute with the S there. Casually added in the S there. Okay, so first thing we want is going to ask us is what's the start offset? So how far into the text do you want to start this styling? And that's going to be our element length, which we created up here on line 26. And then the next parameter is going to be the end offset, and that's going to be this new length, this new element length that we created. So we'll go new, and there it is there, element length. And then the final argument is our object of attributes that we created in our style object. And we're done. All right, let's hit save and let's cross our fingers and hope we didn't make a mistake anywhere. And first things, we will have to go back to our append. And because we've already refreshed our checkboxes here, this will still run, and it should run all our backend scripts. So it will probably first come up with a warning to give permissions to the scopes that we're using. So we'll hit add DTS. There's our authorization required. We'll hit continue, and it's going to give us a big scary warning. Oh no, Google hasn't verified this app. Let's hit advanced because we're advanced legends and go to append DTS. Unsafe, of course it is. Massively evil hackers. And let's hit allow. Real. All right, so that's not going to run the first time, of course, but after the first time we've given authorization, everything, it will run fine, hopefully. So let's click on a location here. So let's put a date time stamp on this one and click checkbox DTS, add DTS. And there we have it. There's our date time stamp appearing here. And I can see that we're missing a M at the end. So let's just go back and Maybe our length is wrong. Ah, I see. Yeah. So our length was wrong. Well, probably a good thing for us to do is just add an extra space in here, and then it will, and you can see the styling hasn't gone over to that last M. So we added an extra space, so the styling will go right to the M, but not the little space that it creates at the end. So let's hit save now. And we'll go back to this one, and we'll just keep that there as a reference. Just click on Add Methods to say, oh, we completed this task with Legends, and click on it now, and you can see the styling's gone to the end. But if I click on it, you can see that there's a space, and if I wanted to create another point, my text has stayed the same. Okay, let's do another example. Let's go down to our diary entries. I've completed my diary entry, and I hit my checkboxes, and it's been added. Okay, so that's it for append list items, paragraphs and table cell items with a date timestamp using Google Apps Script. There is a full written tutorial in the description below. If you like the tutorial, hit that like button. If you want to see more like this, subscribe. I'll see you in the next tutorial.